Wonderful, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We have an exciting panel and an exciting discussion ahead of us, entrepreneurs with successful investments. I'm Chris Campana. I'm at an insurtech startup, Lula Technologies, head of insurance there. Prior to that, I was at an early stage venture capital firm called Avanta Ventures, investing in anything from insurtech, fintech, data, and AI. And we're joined here by Manny Ruiz and Edrizio de la Cruz. And maybe we'll just hop on in with an introduction, if you guys would mind just introducing yourselves. And then we're going to take you guys through a journey of everything from the idea through the exit and everything in between. So it's going to be a fun discussion, and I'll hand off to Manny for an introduction.
Thank you. Honored to be you guys. Always to be with you guys, and always enjoy sharing these entrepreneur stories. Especially with my good friend here, Edrizio. So my name is Manny Ruiz. Currently, I'm the co-founder and chief content officer of a platform called Nuestros Stories. This is my third media-related platform. I've had 2 exits, combining for $50 million. I am building in this platform with Nuestros Stories together with my wife, who's actually not only the co-founder, she's the chairwoman of the company, so we are majority Latina owned. But our platform is devoted to building the most comprehensive digital record of the American Latino in terms of our heritage, our history, and our origins. So we have all of the bells and whistles of many media companies that are in the MarTech business. We're in that platform business as well. That's where we generate a lot of our profit. But we have a cause. Our cause is to elevate our community by sharing these untold stories with integrity and creativity that has never been seen. So there's parts of our company that are part Wikipedia on steroids, part documentaries, short films, and a lot of snackable documentaries and snackable content and a beautiful website. So that's Nuestros Stories. My previous company was called Hispanicize. My wife and I are co-founders of the Latino social media marketing and influencer marketing industry. And that's one of the most recent exits which we had last year. Together with John Leguizamo, we sold to a company called Go Digital. And love to share all these stories because believe me, I never imagined I would be an entrepreneur in my life.
Thank you so much. Thank you for Culture Shifting for inviting me. Good to see you again. I'm Edrizio. I'm currently an author. I wrote a book called The Underdog Founder. It chronicles my journey from when I used to sell guayabas in front of my house in a barrio in Santo Domingo, not far from here, all the way to when I immigrated to the South Bronx, went to college, dropped out of college, went to school at age 22, got into business school, started a tech business called Dali in 2013. Was the first Hispanic to get into Y Combinator. I wound up raising about $20 million from Capitol Capital and then several other investors. Went through the ebbs and flows. A lot of lows, more lows than highs, and I wound up growing the company to $31 million in revenue. Became one of the biggest payment platforms in Latin America. And in 2021, we sold it to MasterCard.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for the introductions, wonderful backgrounds. Maybe we'll dive in with the first question, just to tee things up. How and why did you become an entrepreneur?
Sure. I think for me it was a couple of aspects. Out of necessity. So coming out of business school, I tried to get a job in financial services. Couldn't. So I just built my own financial services company. But I have grown up on remittances. That's the act when you live in a poor country that you receive money from your loved ones abroad. So when I immigrated here to the States, I used to send money back home to my abuela and my tia. But I learned that over 20 years, the process hadn't really evolved. So when I finished business school and I couldn't get a job, I said, well, this process hasn't really evolved. Why don't I just fix it myself?
Yeah, and I love what you're saying because that's a big lesson for entrepreneurs. Start with what you know. If you start with what you know, you have a better way of starting a startup, right, and being successful at it. But for me, I was a crime reporter at the Miami Herald. So when I tell you that business is not in my plans, I'm telling you, it's not in my plan. I wanted to save the world as an investigative reporter. I backed into the media business because when I left the Miami Herald and I got really tired of writing about murders and drownings and hurricanes and all that good stuff, I thought I was going to temporarily do public relations. And what happened was, when I was in the public relations industry, there was only one thing that I was good at and only one thing that I wanted to do, and that was to talk to media, to pitch media on stories, because I knew how to pitch them on stories, because I was on the other side of that fence for a long time. So in the midst of the first .com, the only .com phase that happened in 1999, 2000, I was working alongside many startups, .com startups. And I started to realize, like, my God, they're getting so much money. And privately, I didn't even believe in some of their ideas. I was like, wow, maybe I have an idea. And so I found a niche and I filled the gap, which was, I found that there was no U.S. Hispanic press release wire service that was really doing right what I did privately for the PR firm that I was working at. I was really doing major programs for Procter & Gamble using my own database. So I converted my database into the business. But practically had no money to do it, so we'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, kind of stumbling into entrepreneurship may be a result of necessity or just solving a real pain point. There's a lot of different ways to kind of get your feet on the ground and become an entrepreneur. But now that you became an entrepreneur, the next step is I need money. And so maybe we could start with the journey of raising capital. Manny, I think you called it sort of the bewildering world of raising capital and lessons learned, and it's certainly bewildering to an extent. So how long did it take you to go from idea to raising capital, and what was that journey like?
Well, you have to understand, I majored in history. So talk about being a reporter, majoring in history, and when I used to walk into the newsroom at the Miami Herald and I would pass by the people selling advertising, I was like, ugh, that's like the geeky part of the place. So for me, I had to understand that I was really working in something that was putting me close to what I knew best, which was media. But I didn't know anybody that had money. And my family, so I'm a blue collar kid. I know a lot of us in Miami, Cuban backgrounds, hey, you guys have great business. I didn't have any business connections. But I contacted, actually my first investor was a black woman. Shout out to Bernadette Morris. If Bernadette Morris had not believed in me, I knew her from my college days. She was the head of public relations. If she had not written a check for me for like $20,000, and also developed our website, because I didn't know how to develop our website, I would not have been an entrepreneur. So she put a $20,000 investment, and she came out with $800,000 when we sold to Pierre and Edrizio, a publicly traded company, 2007. She was a majority investor. Actually, another one of my investors is in the audience. She became my partner. And shout out to Christy, who I just see right now. Christy, I think you put more sweat equity than equity, but she did put, I think, $5,000, and we took it far.
Yeah, for me, it was coming out of business school. I actually was able to secure a term sheet for $1 million. Didn't have much of a product, and I thought I was a shit, And then very quickly hit kind of a lag in the process. Then one investor got nervous, and what I quickly learned is that term sheets are like house of cards. Like if one thing goes wrong, the whole thing falls apart. So I went from $1 million to $0 very quickly. And on Christmas Eve 2012, I started making calls. And I was able to get one investor in Brazil to wire the funds. Then that allowed us to survive for like 3 more months. And then 2 more months later, I applied to a bunch of accelerators, like Techstars, 100 startups, and they all said no. And then we supply randomly to the one that was left, right randomly. We didn't think we were going to get in, obviously, because you got rejected by all the like tier 2 ones. There's no way you're going to get into like the harbor of startups. No, we got the opportunity, and with 1 week left runway, we got in. So that was like the miracle that saved us. But that just kept happening. Like, we always kept running into like 1 week of runway, the race happened.
Miracle after another.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was a series of miracles.
Yeah, so you're now at this point, you're able to secure some capital, you're growing your company. Was there a particular, company size, or how did you contemplate an exit? Like, how large did the company have to become? Like, how were you thinking about, hey, we're growing, thinking about an exit? How big do we have to be to consider an exit of some?
I did not think about exit ever. I wanted to keep this business for the rest of my life, give it to my kids, thought that my kids would give it to their kids. Like, I was thinking about this as like if I owned a grocery store. I kid you not. To me, the idea of exiting and selling to a publicly traded company would have been like ridiculous. In my case, what helped precipitate it was not a good thing. It was I went through a divorce, and that kind of changed the economics for me drastically. At the same time, I think we were getting ready to plateau without having investors at a larger scale. And honestly, during my whole time before I sold my first company, I did not really know what investments were like, or in fact, I think I'm still figuring it out. We're doing a pre-seed now, but I'm much better at it now. I understand how to frame a pitch for investors today. But back then, I think I sold it because it seemed like a pretty good number. We sold it for $5.5 million, and I was like, wow, I'm going to end up more than $1 million for myself. That sounds like a pretty darn good number at the time.
Yes, congrats.
So yeah, just to take a step back, like, very few, like less than 1% of founders can even have that conversation. Most of the founders are like, oh shit, this is over. Like, that's 99%.
Yep.
The 1% can say, oh, I'll build a scalable business. And for me in particular, we're venture backed. So you have to return the capital with an exit. But to be honest, I was just surviving. It was just a battle. All 10 years were just fight after fight after fight. I wasn't even thinking about it. 2020, and I wrote this up in the book. It was like 2020 was the worst year of my life. My wife and I got pregnant, lost a baby, had to leave San Francisco, go to Santo Domingo, lost my co-founder. I got fired from my own company, went back in, raised a Series B, and then serendipitously MasterCard wanted to buy us. We said no because we were doing well. They said yes, we said no, they said yes, and I was like, okay. And it was supposed to be a 3-month process. We wound up being 18 months. It was so long that my wife and I got pregnant again and had a baby.
So you better sell or you're going to get pregnant again.
I mean, as you can hear from these two amazing entrepreneurs, it's not easy. I know at the startup that I'm at currently, it's every day, it's always day one, and you're always grinding, and that grind really never ends, even after an exit. In fact, you may even go on to start another company. So when you're sort of thinking through some exits, what were some of the different exit scenarios you thought about? I mean, there's M&As, IPOs. Do you have any thoughts around that the entrepreneurs in the audience could maybe take some things away with?
So for my first exit, PR Newswire. By the way, there's a funny story about PR Newswire. I hated PR Newswire with all of my life. So talk about, I'm a competitive kind of guy, but I really hated them because when I launched, they started circulating, their salespeople started circulating a comparison chart that we were a startup in a garage, and that we were small and all this stuff. And then, you intersect that kind of marketing about you, that pisses you off. And it just, I didn't even need motivation. Now I had extra motivation. So I actually used to when I did my comparison, I created I know this is going to sound childish, but it became a good marketing tool. So I had a PowerPoint that had Luke Skywalker on one side, and he was big, and I had a dwarf version of Darth Vader, and actually they ended up buying us because we were kicking their ass by year 7 of our company. And so, how did I get there? Oh, so anyways, they approached us. The CEO, the president of Pierre approached me at a restaurant here called Versailles, and he goes, "How would you like to sip margaritas in the beach?" And whatever. He just, something that I don't even drink, by the way. But I was like, "What's your offer?" He said, "Listen, we're going to make you an offer, but there's one condition. You cannot shop us around. So if we give you an offer, you cannot share this with Business Wire," who is my main partner, by the way. That felt terrible. So I was selling out my longtime partner, Business Wire. And we did that. And the second time that we sold our company, frankly, it is a very unlikely story that we sold Hispanicize and all of the assets because the economy last year was pretty tanking. The war in Russia emerged. I didn't give us more than a 5% chance of selling that company as a group. It looked impossible, but the market for Latinos is hot, and digital and social is a growth engine that cannot be stopped. So that's why that company sold. I didn't need that sale, but I was a major beneficiary, and I was the founder of the original company.
So it's very amazing stuff.
Okay, one more thing. So when we went to lunch in New York at Pierre Newswire's headquarters, we had lunch at a restaurant over there, and I was a lot of people knew for that Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker thing. So I said to the president, who was the president of Pierre Newswire, like, I have a dilemma when we make this announcement. I have spent years branding you guys as Darth Vader, and this is going to look really weird. And you know what he said? Who's a big Star Wars fan? He said, "Luke, I am your father." So I was like, thank you very much. That became actually what I did have to tell some people when they said, "What happened? We sold the Pierre Newswire." Sorry, bro. I had to say the ending of that.
No, like I said, for us, it was just, we just fighting every day. Like when we raised our Series B, led by SoftBank, we felt pretty good. And honestly, an exit sounded nice, but we were so skeptic that anything could happen that we kept kind of rejecting it. And paradoxically, that made them even improve the offer. I guess the best time to sell is when you don't want to sell very quickly. But I was exhausted and young and weak. I had a very difficult year, personally, spiritually. But the offer was obviously life-changing for everybody that had been involved. Even people that have left the company, we have life-changing events. So we decided to go forward with it. But like I mentioned, it's supposed to be 3 months. It ended up being 18 months, which is a journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, we're now sort of at the point in the journey where, you have an offer on the table. How did you approach creating sort of a competitive bidding bidding between multiple, opportunities to exit? And maybe you didn't. But then at that point, how did you sort of come to terms with the valuation of your company?
So the first time that we sold our company, I have scruples, so I felt really bad that I had signed this agreement with Pierre Newswire, because I love my friends from Business Wire. They were a strategic alliance that elevated our company within months after launching my company. And so the irony is that I knew that they had this one problem, and I knew they would never veer from it, because I knew their DNA, and that was that they never acquired companies themselves. They only partnered with companies. So that was a problem. However, they fired the partner that did all of the Latin America business, and they offered it to me 4 months before we sold fully to Pierre Newswire. And I was like, oh my God, you know what, don't tell me anything. I was like, don't tell me anything about that, because right now, I changed the subject on them every time they wanted to talk about telling me everything they were doing in Latin America and the business. Because when I knew that we were going to freaking stab to the back, it was gonna be a very awkward thing. So I knew that we didn't really, I probably could have pushed for a little higher number. I didn't want to risk it. 5.5 was fine by me. I had gone through a lot of my life, and I think it was a good moment to sell.
Yeah, when we got the offer, it was the first time us seeing that number and the company, and obviously it was great. So immediately we went to run the M&A playbook, which is go find a competitive offer. Because any offer is as good as your best other offer. So we shopped it around. This is in the midst of the pandemic, mind you. So everything was done from like my wife's parents' house in Santo Domingo. So it's not like I can go to New York and meet with execs. So we talked to everyone. Services, and actually we didn't get an M&A offer. We got an offer. Let me say this now. A Series C by Amazon. We're gonna fund it 40, 50 million, something like that. But then we looked at all the comps at the time, and we decided that given the size of the offer, the MasterCard was the best outcome for everybody that had involved. So we went on that.
Yeah, and as you were going through these exits, did you use any advisors along the way? Investment banks, lawyers, friends, other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I did for the first one. I was actually, I'll be honest, since I didn't know what the hell that meant, I was skeptical. I thought they were predatory to have an advisor, even to have an advisor. That's how ignorant I was of this world, right? But she befriended me. She became a client. The way that she befriended me to trust her to become my, she did it on a contingency basis. But she didn't do that to win me over. What she did to win me over is she became my client first. So she would distribute press releases from a variety of clients with me, and that won me over. She built a relationship, and then she said, okay, let me tell you how this works. So at first, we were not going to sell. We went to New York, we met with some funds to see if we wanted to acquire companies. But I just felt, honestly, like my eyes were crossed. I didn't understand this process. So I was like, no, I think we should sell if something comes up. And Peter was the one that approached us. We didn't even solicit. They approached us. They were trying to get into their ass kicked. And now we compete with them again, by the way, but that's another story.
And so we wound up using an investment bank for the process. And I was an investment banker just more than 80 years ago. So I felt like there was organic value. But the bank that we hired was terrible. Like they basically did not follow up on anything. Every intro that they made was people that we already know. So we wound up firing them halfway through the process. It was a big shit show. So it depends. If you're gonna hire someone, make sure that it's somebody of very high caliber. I do think that they can move the needle. Right? They didn't charge, I think it's 4 or 5%. I think it's so worth it if they can increase the price by more than that. Right? In this case, we cannot see it.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, when you're sort of enlisting help, making sure that these are quality individuals. How did you go about doing due diligence on folks that you were enlisting to help? Did you reach out to others that they've perhaps helped, or you knew a friend or another entrepreneur that went through a similar experience?
Yeah, in my case, as I said, she became my client. That got me to say, okay, I need to have lunch with her because she wants to have lunch. She's my client, and that's how she won me over. But I would not have known how to discern who's good or bad other than somebody engaging you, sounding like they're sincere, they know what they're doing. And her partner was a guy named Manny. He had apparently a long record in Wall Street, from what I could tell. And I lucked out that they were actually good. Then really led me through every part, because getting acquired by a publicly traded company, which you would do, is extra. I mean, the scrutiny of everything is amazing. You really need advisors to help you through that.
Yeah, we should have done the diligence that we didn't. We had a really good law firm already that helped us go through the diligence process. And that's right, the level of scrutiny was insane. I mean, that's what I'm taking California did. Plus, we needed approval from the government of Mexico, which, because of the size and the magnitude of this transaction, it was the first one ever in Latin. So that we wound up going up to like senators in Mexico asking them to approve it. And that's why it took so long. But yeah, like the best advice we had was our law firm.
Well, thank you guys so much for the questions. I'd love to, and the answers rather. I'd love to open it up to the audience. If the audience has any questions, I see a quick hand up. This gentleman over here. Is there a microphone?
Of course, Cruz.
Thank you.
Alright, thank you. So I think this question is primarily Edrizio, but then you can find value as well. So, working in tech, Silicon Valley kind of stuff, YC tech stars, you have a lot of experience with things like mine. With this startup dynamic here now, we were looking at the story of when YouTube exited, right? 1.65 to YouTube. Within just a few years after that, their valuation exploded. So the question I have for you, and Manny as well, when you're in that decision point of a potential exit, how do you go about that decision, looking at the future potential of the business and the upside, the potential upside, versus the other option of being exit? Meaning if you're looking, oh, this could be 10 years in a year, but hang on to this 10-year battle and you're saying a little bit longer, or do I get rid of it now and take half the network worth? That kind of makes sense.
I think in hindsight, you could look at it like a mathematical equation. At the moment, if you ever ran a marathon, think about mile 25.5 and try to make a decision. That's the level of exhaustion that we felt. Like we have gone through everything. My goodness, everything from lawsuits to I almost went to jail twice. Lost multiple teams. Lost pivoted 6 times. Went through everything we could have gone through. So mentally, spiritually, we were depleted. That's one aspect. But we still were able to kind of look at all the stakeholders, the investors, the stakeholders, YC, and all the option holders, which is the current team, and we looked at the numbers and it's like, this looks like a happy outcome for everyone. That was the first thing. And then we also kind of adjusted the numbers, because there's a waterfall. Like, we're in a position that we can give some our own to others, and that's what we're not doing. To make sure that everybody's kind of taken care of. And also, if you exit to a public company, they have public stock, so they give you some of this RSUs. So you can negotiate that on top of that. You can get typically 5% more for the retention package for everybody else. So if you have a big enough exit with a public defense company, there's a lot of leverage you can push.
Yeah, I think, that's a very tough question, but I'll tell you this, a lot of your decision of when to sell is also going to be predicated, as Edrizio said, some of it is personal. Some of it is like, do I have the mentality of like, I could make a good amount of money now that would really have an impact on my family, my life now, or do I kind of roll the dice a little bit more, the economy could change. In fact, interestingly enough, when we, a month after we sold, we sold officially on December 31st, 2007, one of the happiest days of my life. A month later, the acquiring company here in Edrizio shut down all sorts of M&A activity, etc. The president of Pyramid ended up saying to me, Manny, if you had been 1 month more in due diligence with us, there was not going to be an acquisition. And I was like, wow, we talking about like, timing is so incredible. This recent transaction, I thought was a very well paid transaction, considering different factors. And for that one, we had held on to the company for 12 years. The first one was 7 years. Second one was 12 years for many different factors. But I would say that it really matters a lot what your psyche is. I think we were also due in the first company to do some tech upgrades that were going to cost money, and were going to probably require for us to go out raising capital. And I did not want to do that. I was like, hell no, I don't want to go through that. I have that check waiting for me right there on the other side of the rainbow. I'm going to freaking take it. Sometimes you get greedy and you go bust. So, I don't know.
Very valuable. Thanks, Phil.
We had another question.
Appreciate this conversation. Really inspiring from you both. I would advise the young guy here, my guy. Just giving you my perspective. I'm a VC, and on the topic of an M&A deal, I always encourage founders that to say to yourself, this isn't the greatest thing I'll ever do. So to your point, don't try to hoard and hold on to something. Get a deal done. It's not the greatest thing you'll ever do. You don't want to do great things. So just as a VC, I'm curious, how did you manage external stakeholders through the process? Were your outside capital, were they friendly to the transaction, supportive? What was that dynamic like for you each?
Sure.
For us, we had a board of the institute, and we had to prove every step of the process, from the LOIs, to negotiating LOIs, to negotiating the merger docs, and you actually need to disclose the transaction pre-closing, and you need like 95% approval. So instead of sending an email, I just talked to every single investor, and I had close to 100. So I just got on the phone, and the first thing I said was like, thank you. Thank you for always being there. It was a great moment. I'm proud of being partnered with you. Great news, this is going to happen. These are the potential economics, and we're still working through the details. And I just treated them like I would treat like my company, because technically they were. I kept them very, very much on the nose, on top of everything, and when things, extended from 3 months to 6 months, to 12 months, to 18 months, I just kept kind of putting news out there that was happening, because you never know what happens. Like these relationships are forever, without it. So I just kept my place for everything, and make sure they understood all the risks and rewards associated.
It's a complex question answer because it varied very differently between both transactions. The first one, we barely had any investor. Like I told you, I think cash-wise, we were dealing with $25,000 to start the whole company. A lot of it was sweat equity. I did not take a salary for like 4 months. And when I did, it was like $100 a week, and then $200 a week. And those sacrifices helped us to do, listen, it was a miracle of God. Honestly, I have no business being on the stage having had that transaction, because Hispanic PR Wire was just a real blessing from day one. And we filled in, again, find the need, fill the gap. I believe in that deeply. So we didn't really have this. We probably had 4 or 5 stakeholders other than the managing partners that we're working with. And if we wanted to sell or we wanted to do whatever we wanted to do, they were not significant partners in the company in terms of their shares. And they were fine with that. So that was an easy one. The second one was more complex because I was the original investor in my second venture. And about year 3 or 4, we took on some investors to make some acquisitions. We own Hispanic Kitchen, we own Latino Mom, we surrounded our property with more verticals so that we would do a more complete 360 Hispanic digital media and social media platform. And that next transaction was much more complex. It was a lot. The investors had a minority position, but they had the majority power for funding and money and allowing any transactions. And some of them were not easy to deal with. There were a lot of lessons that I learned about the cap table and managing it, because that one required for you to know what the hell a cap table was to the T. The first one was pretty easy.
Any other questions in the audience? I think we have one up here, up front.
I think we both, it's inspiring, I think, for the Latino community to have two exited founders, both of which work with our communities, but specifically Manny, you're trying to bring to light much of what happens in our community. I want to talk a little bit about today. If you could both share, after these successful exits, what's happening today and what are the exciting goals that you see for the future?
Yeah, I think look, the reason I wrote the book is because I felt like, given my experiences, growing up barrio, then the project, the Bronx, and then having that big outcome, I felt like a lot of successes in the Valley time. This is only this type of people from this type of background can reach that level. And I felt like, man, coming from a different background is actually not a disadvantage, it's actually a huge advantage if you know how to mentally reframe that, right? And that is the mindset that I approach in writing the book. That's why I titled it Unresolved Founders. I go from unseen to unstoppable because I do believe that if you come from a different background, have different hurdles, you can really weaponize those hurdles and turn it into rocket fuel. So I'm excited that tech's become much more accessible to different people. But the message that we want to put out there is that there is a path forward, and there's a playbook to get to that level. Hopefully, more people have access to that.
Look, Nuestra Stories is where I want to leave my legacy. This is not just a media company. The reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I'm changing the narrative about Latinos. My wife and I are devoted to not only having a rock star performing company for business, using the previous business models, right, that we've used to be successful and to have exits, but to actually build a new legacy for Latinos, building this most beautiful, engaging, and super fun company that just changes the narrative about Latinos through the prism of origins, history, heritage, doing it every day rather than just Hispanic Heritage Month. And the cool thing about it is that we're reaching some really interesting milestones internally as a company because brands love the kind of engaging and non-political, just elevating platform that we do. It's very different, nothing that exists like it. And it's a platform that's actually galvanizing celebrities, cultural institutions, Latino leaders of every kind, media companies. Everyone wants a piece of Nuestra Stories in some way or another. And that's what makes me excited is that I know this time we're building through the cause of our heritage, we're really building a legacy and an unstoppable company.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're just about at time. At this point, I would like to thank the panelists. I'd love to thank the audience. I think this was a great conversation, great discussion, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. All right, so the rest of the afternoon, we're going to take a quick